Hello kids, it's me again, back with another video. Today's video, well, you all know what's on the menu for today. We're gonna be talking about Shane Dawson, or more specifically, Shane Dawson's mysterious horror movie that he keeps on talking about making since like last year. Firstly, I'd like to say shout out to Nick DeRamio for giving me the inspiration to make this. I saw their video about Shane's return to YouTube, their latest video that they put out. And so I thought, okay, I'm getting tilted and I need to share my tiltedness with the world. So that's what this video is kind of about, I guess. Firstly and foremostly, I'd like to preface this video, I guess, by saying that I sort of kind of used to be a Shane Dawson fan, not back in the day like 2012, 2014, but rather in 2019. I believe that's when he put out his series about Jake Paul. I was so into that. Oh my goodness, I ate it all the way up. I'm not gonna lie, used to love his content. Obviously now that I've looked at his content with a critical eye, I can see that it's not the best, and here I am, going to criticize his content myself. With that out of the way, let's get started. First, I want to say this. I don't want to have this be like me gatekeeping filmmaking. That's not what I'm trying to do here. There are a lot of people on YouTube, YouTubers I guess you can call them, who are making really, really high quality content, putting out feature-length documentaries like once a month. And honestly, that's great. Those people, they're making so much great content on YouTube. Shane Dawson is not one of those people. If you've seen any of his content, then you'll know that even though he gets a lot of notoriety for what he makes, his skill is definitely below that of other people who are making either just documentary style content or even the same kind of stuff as him, like conspiracy stuff. Before I go into why I think Shane's horror movie is doomed to fail, I want to go into his past projects. So, one thing that I learned from Nick DeRamio, who I don't know if I'm saying his name right, I hope I am. Nick covered the series that was on, I believe, Starz, called The Chair. Zachary Quinto was the executive producer of it. And basically the concept of that show is that you have two different filmmakers. I don't know if it was the same script, but definitely the same concept and the same budget, and see what film they make, and whoever, I can't remember what the parameters were for winning. I don't know if it was box office or just like general reception. I think it had to be box office. So I guess whoever has the most fans watching, or I guess the most people, again, I don't know, but whoever has the most people watching their movie ends up, I guess, winning the overall series. And it only ran for one season, which is a shame because that's a super interesting concept. But given the sort of kind of dumpster fire that was the first season of that show, I can understand. So basically, condensed version is that Shane Dawson was on the show along with another filmmaker whose name I can't remember, and I'll put it on screen, but I can't remember it, you know. And they were given two concepts. Basically, someone comes home for Thanksgiving, and I guess they come to terms with it's like being in your hometown during Thanksgiving when you're an adult type of, that was the concept. One movie that got made was called Holidaysburg. It was by the other filmmaker whose name escapes me. And then Shane's movie was called Not Cool. And well, I haven't actually seen Not Cool. I've only seen Nick DeRamio's analysis of it. And honestly, I think that's good enough. I don't think I need to subject myself to that, like, no thank you. But if you don't know, Not Cool and Shane Dawson, I guess, won that season of The Chair because this was around 2014 and his fans came out in droves because this is like the height of his popularity to see this movie versus the other filmmaker who was relatively unknown online or really anywhere. Didn't get that many to come actually watch a movie. That's really the only reason that Shane Dawson won The Chair, is because his teenage fans, they came and ate up what he had to serve. And well, I mean, if you compare the review scores of Holidaysburg and Not Cool, Holidaysburg, it's not perfect for a movie. It got meh reviews, but compared to Not Cool, I mean, it might as well be Citizen Kane. You know, like, goodness, because that was one steamy turd, okay? So The Chair also went into the behind the scenes aspects of making a film, and essentially what happened is that Shane Dawson railroaded the entire process. And through so many hissy fits, like, oh my goodness, anytime something didn't go his way, which is often in filmmaking, he would just freak out, be like, no, it has to be this way, it has to be my way, we have to do it this certain way. And obviously, it wasn't really the best decision creatively or production-wise, but of course, the people who were on the production team for Shane's film, they just kind of had to go along with what he said, and that's how we ended up with Not Cool. So honestly, in my opinion, if they would have given that to literally anybody else, and it doesn't even have to be like a normal person, like you could have given it to another YouTuber at the time, I'm sure that had like filmmaking aspirations other than Shane Dawson, and they probably would have done an okay job at it. Purely for the fact that they probably would have been easier to work with than Shane Dawson was, because he was a nightmare. Holy cow, oh my goodness. Just watching Nick's analysis of The Chair, it's like, did his fans watch this show? Because it does not show him in a good light at all. Like, ooh. Anyway, so aside from Not Cool, Shane has had a few different projects. The only one really that comes to mind for me presently is, I guess it's like a series of short films based on his book, It Gets Worse. And those were kind of, I mean, crass. And there's really nothing wrong with being crass, but it's like 2012 Shane Dawson humor level crass, so it's just, you know, making fun of overweight people and minorities. And for the most part, these projects are looked fondly upon by Shane and by his fans. And really, I think it's just the case of rose-colored glasses, maybe? I don't even know who to compare it to, but basically if somebody whose work I enjoyed, let's say if David Fincher put out an absolute stinky boo-boo piece of garbage and I still went to the theater and watched it and gave it like 4 stars on Letterboxd. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but you get my idea, alright? This is how, I guess, Shane Dawson has embiggened himself to fancy himself a filmmaker. And listen, I suppose technically he is a filmmaker. He is a person who has made films, written them, starred in them, maybe directed a couple. So technically speaking, he is a filmmaker, but I don't consider him to be one. So why I was thrust into making this video, as you can see, I'm wearing this shirt. It's because I literally just got back from work and the first thing I'm doing is recording this. I was thinking about it last night, laying awake, unable to sleep. I remember Shane put out some video last year. It was like August 2020. I think it was before everything went totally bad, but he was still making videos and he talked about wanting to make a horror movie. And I'm like, this was after I had watched Nick's analysis of The Chair and Not Cool, and I was like, Shane Dawson, he can't, I don't think he has what it takes to make a film, especially without the support that he had on The Chair, because basically everything was given to him. He had an entire crew, he had an entire budget, he basically, well, he didn't have the script, he had to write the script, but he had the entire premise, and like, all that was handed to him, and he still made a turd. So I don't know how he can do that without that. He's had other films, I'm not really sure the details of the production, but it's doomed to fail. Whatever horror movie that Shane is devising is doomed to fail. It's not gonna go well. A lot has happened since then. Number one, an entire year has passed. Number two, you know, this was kind of in the middle of a pandemic, and I mean, while it wasn't impossible, people certainly still did it. It was kind of hard, especially on an indie level, to make a film. And also, he was going through an entire scandal. So yeah, that kind of prevented him from doing that. And now, in his latest video, he mentions that, oh, I'm gonna make a horror movie. And I don't know, man, it's been a year. I don't know how much progress has been made on this. I don't know if it's mentioned in the video because, again, I only saw all of this through Nick Durania's analysis of this video. So I think the main reason that I was so kind of upset about Shane being able to excel despite his behavior in The Chair is that I feel like the other filmmaker, her name is A.M. Lucas, that's her name, I remembered it, A.M. Lucas. Of course, Nick only really focused on Shane Dawson because, you know, he was kind of the center of that video. But I feel like, compared to A.M. Lucas, Shane was just really unwilling to learn about the actual processes of filmmaking because, surprise, Compared to YouTube, at least at that point in 2014, and sort of kind of now, filmmaking is a team effort. You have to have a lot of people working together to actually make a film. Whereas with YouTube, you really only need one person. I mean, I'm shooting this, I set up the camera and the light, and I'm the one performing, I guess, and I'm going to be the one editing, and I'm going to be the one publishing. So with YouTube, you can have it be like a one-man show. But you cannot do that in filmmaking. And I don't think Shane realized that. Like I've hinted, it's highly likely that this horror movie project that Shane has is going to fall apart for like a number of reasons, which I'll get into now. First, let's start with pre-production. Something tells me, I don't know, I just have this like sneaking suspicion that there is no script. Like at all. I think Shane talked about writing at some point, but I don't know, something tells me that there's either no script or the script isn't finished, which, I mean, I get it, writing scripts takes like a long time. I would know, I'm currently writing one. Especially feature-length scripts, they take a while, especially to get to that final state of polish that's ready to actually be shot. It can take, oh goodness, I mean, a multitude of years. So, you know, but just based on, you know, Shane's habit of doing things without a plan, I just think that a good concrete script just doesn't exist. So without a script, you sort of kind of can't make a film. Now, there are obviously exceptions to this. I saw this one movie with a bunch of my friends called Convergence. I think it's called Convergence, but basically, while there was like an outline of what was going to happen in the movie, a lot of it was improvised. But there was still like a concrete plan. There was a point A at the beginning and a point B at the end that was to be reached. So, you know, all movies, they're not made with like 90-page scripts. Some of them are a little more loose. And that's definitely an experimental way to make a movie. But I don't know if I've ever heard of a horror movie being improvised. I mean, the one that I just said, Convergence, was kind of sort of sci-fi horror, but still. Also, even if a script does get made, which there could be one in the works, who knows, I don't know. I don't think Shane Dawson's brand of writing really translates to 2021. I mean, his humor, if it can be called that, is what led to his downfall, like last year? But I feel like Shane's style of writing just does not fit in with current times, and I can't imagine the script being worthwhile. Like, if I wrote a Shane Dawson brand script and I sent it off to like 50 production companies, I would get 50 rejection letters. Guaranteed. It can't work. It can't work these days. It's a relic of a bygone time, is what I'm trying to say. And you know, honestly, am I a better writer than Shane? I will say yes. I mean, I don't write comedy. That's not something I write. It's mostly drama, so I don't know if I could write a better comedy than Shane, but just at the baseline level, I feel like I have more skill. But honestly, the bar is on the floor. So, you know, you watching this, you're probably also a better writer than Shane Dawson. And you can put that on your resume. Honestly, go for it. Congrats. You're a fantastic writer compared to Shane Dawson. Another huge part of pre-production in a movie, in the process of making a movie, is financing. You gotta have money to pay your crew, and you gotta have money to rent equipment, and you gotta have money to do a whole lot of stuff. So Shane, he likes to pretend he's like broke, but he literally just bought like a $2 million house in Colorado, so, you know, I think he has the capital to make a movie. And luckily for Shane, horror movies can be made for super cheap. Blumhouse, if you're familiar with that production company, that is Jason Blum's production company, produces horror movies for like very little money. Usually I think the number is around $5 million, which I know that sounds like a lot, but in filmmaking, $5 million is like a small budget. And also there are a lot of really notable horror films that were made for like very little money. One of those is the Blair Witch Project, which was, I can't remember the exact number, but it was made for $100,000 to $300,000, which again, very little money. And then of course there's Paranormal Activity, which is famous for being like the most profitable film because it was made on a budget of $15,000 and it made like $130 billion at the box office. So you can make a good horror movie for like no money. And honestly, I feel like if Shane invested even just $100,000 into the making of this movie, it could be made decently. However, we have to acknowledge the dreaded triangle of good, fast, and cheap. So basically, I think this is for like all creative fields, but if you want something done well, you can't also have it be done fast and done for cheap, basically. And so if Shane wants to make a horror movie for little money, it can either be cheap and good, which means it's gonna take a long time to make, or it can be cheap and fast, which means it's not gonna be good. And something tells me that this movie is just gonna be cheap and fast, kind of like Shane Dawson's YouTube videos, which, I mean, listen, it takes, honestly, not a lot of money to make a YouTube video. I mean, the series that he's making, I would guess that he spends some money on travel, and hopefully he pays his camera guy. I really hope Andrew got paid. I hope Andrew got paid so much for what he had to put up with. And then he has this new guy, and who knows if he's getting paid. I can only hope so. Assuming Shane might not be able to finance it for whatever reason, I don't see why this would be the case. Maybe he just doesn't want to spend his own money. I don't know. He's probably gonna have a really hard time finding outside financiers because Shane's name is so tarnished. Trying to make a movie under his name, a Shane Dawson production, is probably like a guaranteed financial loss, and nobody's gonna want to put up their money for that. It's just not gonna happen. Not only is his name associated with risk, but his films aren't profitable. I looked up the budget for Not Cool. $800,000. It made $36,000 at the box office. That is considered a box office flop. Even if it did make $800,000 at the box office, it's still going to be considered a box office flop because there's no profit made. You just kind of made your budget back. You didn't actually gain anything, right? So if you have like a body of work already and you've proven yourself to be a box office nightmare, you're gonna have trouble finding someone to finance your films. Because, I mean, the people who are behind, you know, film financing, they're in it for the money, duh. It's kind of hard for a financer to finance a film if they know their return on investment is gonna be terrible. So, knowing that Shane Dawson's ROI is going to be in the toilet, it's probably not gonna get anyone to finance his film. Now, this only really factors in like a traditional release, like a theater release. If he does VOD, it might be okay. Of course, these days, who knows? I'm not even sure why Shane thought coming back was a good idea. I'm appalled that he still has fans, but the fans that he does have now, I mean, it's way less. And, you know, the fans that he also has now are probably children, and children don't really have disposable income because they don't have jobs. So they're probably less likely to spend money on renting or purchasing Shane Dawson's movie unless they, like, I don't know, steal from their parents. And also, again, his name is so tarnished, nobody's gonna want to work with him, be on his crew, direct his movie for him, produce it for him, act for him. If they have any self-respect, they will not want to be in a Shane Dawson production. So he's gonna have some trouble finding crew. Honestly, maybe not that much trouble, because, you know, some people, they just want to work, so they'll work on really anything. So that's kind of a lesser problem for him, getting actors and crew and stuff, but it's still probably going to present itself as a problem when that comes up. And also, considering that Shane is a nightmare to work with, morale is probably going to be really low once filming has wrapped. Like, after a month of dealing with Shane Dawson, he might tarnish his reputation further by being a nightmare on set. Assuming after all of that, it still goes into production, there are still going to be problems. We saw what happened on The Chair. We know he's a nightmare to work with. It's not gonna be a good production. I will say, you really do need to have a certain personality to be a director, right? And honestly, to me, it sounds a little cliche, but it is true. You need certain personality traits to be a director. Not everybody has them. I do not have them. And I know this, which is why I'm not pursuing directing. So here are a few of those personality traits. You have to deal with a lot of different personalities on set. Actors can be a handful, crew people can be a handful. You're managing a whole lot at once, and a whole lot of different types of people at once, and it can be a lot. right? You have to be willing to work with and be deferential to others, okay? If the cinematographer says, hey, I think this shot needs to be lit this way, and they've been doing what they've been doing for decades, you can't just go and say, no, I want it to be lit this way because this is what I want and this is how it's going to be, like Shane Dawson was on the chair. You just kind of have to recognize and understand that the people you're working with, especially if you're Shane Dawson, right? The people that you're working with are probably more experienced than you and probably know what they're doing. So you have to listen to them and take what they're saying into account. Unlike Shane Dawson was willing to do on the chair. And you have to be able to deal with things when they inevitably go wrong. Because Murphy's Law is very much applicable on a film set. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And you gotta be able to deal with that. You gotta be able to bounce back. You have to be able to think on your feet and be able to devise a way to fix something if something goes wrong, right? And Shane has proved himself to be unable or unwilling to do all of these things on the chair. The audio stopped. I can't do it. We're gonna do camera audio because I accidentally stopped the recording on audition. Okay, whatever, it's fine. It's fine, you have to be able to bounce back. Like I just said, you have to be able to deal with when things go wrong. And the way I'm gonna deal with how things are going wrong is I'm just gonna use the camera audio. You see, it's adaptability, it's called adaptability, and I can exhibit it better than Shane Dawson can. So there you go. So yeah, I honestly highly doubt that Shane is able to run a set. And I know, technically speaking, the first AD is like the person who like manages the set as a whole. But as a director, you're kind of doing all that creatively anyway. It's not really like, you know, making sure that the PAs know when to pick someone up. That's not like a director's job. But I just don't think Shane can run a set that way. And if he's going to be the one directing this, it's gonna fall apart. It's gonna fall apart. The production is just gonna fall apart, guaranteed. So post-production, honestly, all I gotta say is I really hope Shane doesn't edit it himself. Shane's editing, it's fine, but for feature-length film, I don't know if that skill that he currently has is gonna translate. So I hope he gets an actual person skilled in post-production to edit it, otherwise it's gonna be not good. And even if he does get someone to edit it for him, he's probably still gonna steamroll the process like he's probably gonna do throughout the other phases of the production for this hypothetical horror movie. And then finally, we've made it to distribution. After all of this, the film is done, and now it's ready to go out to the masses. Considering the fact that he's either self-financing this movie or maybe not able to find a financier, he's probably gonna find some trouble with distributing it. Whether or not he's gonna be able to find a distributor with his tarnished name, we don't know, honestly. It's up in the air. So he's probably not gonna be able to get this into theaters, which, okay, fine. But even with a YouTube or VOD release, I can't imagine him making any of his budget back. It's not gonna be profitable for him. And listen, I get it. Some people, they're in film because they like the art. But these people usually have like unlimited money, so maybe not the best example to make, but it's not gonna go well for him in the distribution phase either. And of course, you'll get people like Nick Duramiel and maybe even me, if I'm up to it at the time, dunking on his video when it comes out, which not really a problem with distribution, but you know, his fragile ego may be affected by it. So, considering all these factors, is this whole rigmarole even worth it for Shane? And honestly, no. But that doesn't mean anything, he's still gonna do it, because again, ego, large. Even after all that's happened, after getting canceled, after having your monetization cut off, after becoming a pariah, he still comes back to YouTube because he knows he still has a very young core fan base who will ride or die for him. Those people, they're gonna watch the movie. People who are hate watching it are gonna watch the movie. People who are stumbling across it are gonna watch the movie. It's not gonna get wide appeal, but I don't know, maybe he never expected it to. But honestly, I don't know what he expects with this movie that he's trying to make. I thought after what happened last year, he was just gonna pretend it never existed, but no, he's really still going for it. And by the way, I am by no means saying that Shane shouldn't go through with this. I want him to try to make a horror movie so that I can witness the dumpster fire and point and laugh. For pure entertainment value, not of the movie, but of the process, I hope he makes this movie. I will relish when production starts on untitled Shane Dawson horror movie, because it's going to be a treat from beginning to end, and I'm not talking about the movie itself. I can't say who's gonna find this video, but perhaps you watching this, I mean, if you're a Shane Dawson fan and you're watching this, you haven't gotten this far in the video, you just left your dislike and left. But anyways, if you are morbidly curious and made it this far in the video, you may be wondering to yourself, well, Arin, why don't you make your own movie? Why don't you do it since you're so knowledgeable about filmmaking? Sorry, that was really funny. I cracked myself up. Why don't I make a movie? Well, trust and believe. If I had the passive income and wealth that Shane Dawson has accumulated, I would be making my own movies. But alas, here I am, working a 9-to-5, chipping away at a screenplay. So I can only kind of do it the slow way. But if I had the money, and if I had the connections that Shane Dawson had, I could and would be doing it. Trust and believe. But anyways, if any film producers or directors are looking for a teen drama to make, then hit me up. I got 70 pages of a script waiting just for you. So, after this whole thing, Shane Dawson has now been officially added to the list of people I'm becoming a filmmaker just to spite. On the top of this list, we have my English teacher from the 10th grade who told me I'd never be a good writer. Under him, we have Tyler Perry, who is just an awful representation of Black media. And now added to the list, we have Shane Dawson, whose very existence as an attempted filmmaker offends me. So, there you go, Shane. You're on my list now, bud. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Follow me on Twitter. Donate to my Ko-fi. Read my Medium articles. The one that I posted has been out for like a couple of weeks now, but I still think it's a banger and I think you should read it. So go do that. Now that I've made this video, I'm gonna go finish my screenplay. And what? And what? What are you gonna do about it? I'm gonna write it. And you can't do anything about it. How does that feel? Bet it feels bad. I don't know why I'm being so aggro. This is weird. Anyways, bye.